Hello everyone. Today we're diving into the mysterious disappearance of a young hiker just a month or so ago. 22-year-old Austin King grew up in Winona, Minnesota, a town on the Mississippi River bordering Wisconsin. Austin was described as one of the best people his father Brian had ever met. He was also a best friend to his little brother and always had a smile on his face. Austin was also a recent triathlon winner who loved adventure and to push himself. From the spring to summer of 2024, Austin had started working as a Centeria concierge employee at Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. Yellowstone is a nearly 3,500 square mile wilderness recreation area atop a volcanic hotspot, covering mainly Wyoming, but also parts of Montana and Idaho as well. Yellowstone features dynamic canyons, alpine rivers, lush forests, hot springs, and gushing geysers, including its most famous, Old Faithful. It's also home to hundreds of animal species, including bears, wolves, bison, elk, and antelope. At the end of the summer, Austin had decided that he wanted to do a solo climb to Eagle Peak. Now, Eagle Peak is a 11,372-foot mountain that sits atop a remote and rugged southeast pocket of Yellowstone National Park. This area is also located in Wyoming. It's in a roadless area of mountain ridges, dense woods, and steep topography that many consider among the most inaccessible landscape in the lower 48. So Austin would set off for his multi-day trip into the mountains. So he only brought minimal items like sleeping bag, water bottle, things like that he could carry because this was going to be an on-foot trip. On September 14th of 2024, Austin would end up being dropped off by a boat at Terrace Point to set off on a solo hike to reach Yellowstone's highest mountain. 2 days later, on September 16th, Austin would speak with a Back County ranger near Howell CR Cabin, which was not on his planned route. He was headed to Site 68 for the night and had plans to climb Eagle Peak the following morning. And the next day, he would accomplish just that. Around 7 p.m. on September 17th, Austin would call his mother while on top of Eagle Peak, as well as leave multiple voicemails to family members and friends. During these calls, he would speak about his relief from reaching the top of the mountain after grappling the extreme weather conditions. 3 days later, on September 20th, a boat was waiting to pick Austin up on the shore of Yellowstone Lake's southeast arm to take Austin back to where he was staying in Grant Village. However, Austin would never show up. This is extremely concerning to the park rangers, so by daybreak the next morning, a search for Austin began. Specialized search and rescue teams would be sent out trying to locate him. Helicopters would be brought in, search dogs, spotting scopes, trackers, and drones.
Yellowstone, there is an active search and rescue taking place in the southeast corner of the park. Nonstop Locals' Alex McCollum joins us live this morning. Alex, you are tracking the alert that we got late yesterday. What do we know about the search this morning?
Yeah, Bradley, we don't have any new updates as of this morning on this search, but we do know that crews are still in the park searching for 22-year-old Austin King. He was reported late back from his hike on September 17th. That's last Tuesday. He was on a hike for 7 days and did not come back for his boat pickup when he was supposed to. This was in the Eagle Peak area at the southeast corner, area of the park. Let me break down some more of these details if you are headed in the park because they are asking everybody in the park to be on the lookout. Now, King is described as 6 feet tall and 160 pounds with brown hair, hazel eyes, and glasses. He was last seen wearing a black sweatshirt and gray pants. The search area includes Eagle Peak, Eagle Pass Mountain Creek Trail, and Eagle Creek Trailhead in Shoshone National Forest. Rescuers found King's camp and personal items after the search started on Saturday. If you have any information, you are asked to call the number there on your screen. That is 307-344-2643. Anyone traveling in the backcountry near Eagle Peak since September 14th may have seen King, and you could be helpful to the search.
It said that rescuers ended up finding footprints as well as remnants of a fire. However, they could not determine if it was in fact Austin's. And you have to imagine how hard it would be for searchers to go into this terrain because you can't just have anyone go out there. You have to have people that are specialized in stuff like this, in rescuing people from very harsh climates as well as, hiking. Not everyone can climb a mountain safely and deal with that kind of terrain, the weather conditions, and also just know what to look out for signs out there. Eventually, a camp believed to be Austin's would end up being located in the Upper Howell Creek area. They ended up recovering belongings thought to be Austin's and returned them to his family. However, there were no other signs of Austin being there. Then, at the summit of Eagles Peak, NPS rescuers would end up finding a handwritten letter that we know for a fact was written by Austin. This note read, quote, "I can't feel my fingers and my glasses are fogged from the ruthless weather of the mountains. I truly cannot believe I am here after what it took to be here. I endured rain, sleet, hail, and the most wind I have ever felt. I could not see Eagle for most of the day due to the most fog I've ever seen in my life. I free solo climbed too many cliffs to get here and walked up to the peak from the connecting peak, aka not the right path. I am 22 years old and I will never forget this day for the rest of my life. Life is beautiful. Get out and live it." End quote. He then signed his name at the bottom of the letter and drew a smiley face. You could just tell how proud of himself he was for making it up there. But the question lies, what happened to Austin after getting to the top of that mountain? Now, as far as I've seen, the voicemail that Austin actually ended up sending his father from the top of Eagle Peak didn't actually connect and send through till about a week later. But let me know if I'm wrong. That's what I read. I don't think that has anything to do with Austin being somewhere and sending it to his dad late. I think it was just signaling issues from being up on the mountain. But according to those who have heard this voicemail, because I haven't been able to find it online, Austin allegedly sounded quite disoriented in the voicemail. Hiker John Lamb ended up telling the media, quote, "He admitted he came up the wrong path. He possibly didn't know the right path to take down, to head back down to the lake. You can tell he's scared in the voicemail. He's cold. He doesn't really know where he's at. It took him all day to get there, so you can just imagine trying to come down a mountain not seeing at all and not knowing where you're at up there and which direction to go." End quote. And it would turn out that Austin actually had sent multiple other voicemails. He didn't just call his mom and he didn't just send a voicemail to his dad. He also apparently called his best friend Desmond as well as another female friend. But all of these messages seem to have the same tone. And from what I've read, police haven't been able to exactly pinpoint where these phone calls were placed that could lead to finding Austin. It seems like they were made once he got to the top. He was really excited. He wrote that letter, explaining his excitement and how he was feeling. He sent those calls to let everyone know he'd made it. And then he just dropped off the face of the earth after that. Now, a GoFundMe page ended up being set up for Austin's disappearance, and as far as I've seen, this funds were going to be used for search and rescue efforts, and the last time I checked, over $18,000 had been raised so far, and more than 100 rescue personnel had participated in the searches. By October 2nd, the family would end up being informed by law enforcement that the search wasn't going to be for a missing person anymore, but instead a recovery mission. But his family has still held out hope that there is some miracle of a chance that he will be found alive. Authorities would come out to say, quote, "Despite the significant search efforts over the past week and a half, we have not been able to locate Austin. Although we will continue to hope for the best, I want to extend my deepest sympathies to Austin's family, friends, and colleagues." End quote. Now, this map you can see here on the screen represents the search efforts and how much area has been covered. The red indicates the ground searches, and the blue indicates aerial searches. Yet despite how well it seems the areas have been combed, Austin still hasn't been found. There have been no signs other than that campsite that they found that they think was Austin's. I mean, they found some belongings there, it seems like, that were his. So the campsite, that is all though. Which, leaves people to think that something happened to him coming back down then. He never made it back to his campsite. A week later, Brian himself would head out to Wyoming to set up a base camp at Eagle Creek Campground to be boots on the ground near the search zone. A couple days later, canines would also be brought in along with more supplies. And since it seems like the authorities decided to stop searching, Brian himself was going to try to figure out search efforts to try to find his son himself. And they were boots on the ground. However, it seemed like they wanted to try to fly in more hikers so that they could be dropped off closer to Eagle Peak. However, the park officials did not approve having a helicopter bring people in there. And this was due to the park not being able to verify whether or not the pilot had sufficient experience flying and landing in mountain terrain. My best guess is they didn't want more tragedies to happen where, they'd have to go out and rescue more people if this pilot wasn't used to flying in that type of terrain and dropping people off in that terrain, because it's not like just a flat surface. So I guess they wanted to minimize, the tragedies because, one person's missing. They don't want more people missing or injured out there, which I understand, but also it's just so frustrating. Now, an organizer of the search, who was also a hiker named John Lamb, which I just spoke about quoting earlier, would also say to the media, quote, "We felt like it was very important to utilize these next 2 days before new snow falls because we may not get another chance until next year. We're not mad, we are just disappointed." End quote. And that is because as winter is approaching, the chances of finding Austin were getting more and more minimal. All you want to do is go out there and find your child, and then you're told, no, you can't, go and bring people closer. So now everyone's having to hike in, and it's so far, and now it's starting to snow, and It's just one thing after another that's just holding everyone back from finding Austin. But it's not like searches didn't happen at all, which we've seen in cases where, not a lot of search efforts are brought out. There seem to have been a lot of searching going on. More than 3,225 air and ground miles were logged in the area near Eagle Peak. Search crews from Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Park in Park and Teton County scoured the mountains on foot and from the air. They encountered accumulations of snow and ice and 6-foot drifts on Eagle Peak. So you can just imagine the terrain that Austin had to go through to get up there. And then having to go back down in the dark and not knowing where he's going. He can hardly see. His glasses are fogged. That sounds like a recipe for disaster, sadly. Bill Dose, who is a retired law enforcement agent that now runs a private search and rescue coordinator based in Cody, also sent his team of 6 into the wilderness. Bill was said to deploy 4 teams of search dogs, including scent and cadaver dogs, and at least 2 drone teams. Austin's father, Brian, saying, quote, "As a dad, I need to be out here searching for my kid," end quote.
All I do is wait hour by hour and minute by minute. I'm not going to give up until I get that call.
Brian King Henke has been leaning on hope as the days pass without word from his 22-year-old son. Austin King is his oldest, known for his big heart and natural athleticism.
He could come up to you as a total stranger and you guys would leave as friends.
King is a triathlon winner and full of outdoor survival skills, his dad says. Skills he took out to Yellowstone National Park, where he's been working recently.
He was in his element.
This month, taking on his toughest hike yet.
Were you nervous when he said he was going to do that, or?
No, I said, hey man, just send me a picture, call me, because I never want to hold any of my kids back. I always told them, hey, go do it. And the last thing he said on there, he's like, let's do this. He's heading down.
Now, as I said, a big and scary issue at this point in time is the approaching winter. Because if they weren't able to find Austin by a certain time point, not only is the winter approaching, but also all of these, campgrounds and sites and hiking areas get shut down for the winter because it's not safe. Which means that if Austin isn't found now, it is truly most likely presumed that he has passed on, because the chances of him surviving out there in the wilderness over the entire winter are minimal to none, sadly. People can survive for a month at a time, but there's only so long you can go, especially not having proper gear, not having proper, winterized clothing to be out there in those temperatures. But sadly, that is kind of the marker that everyone was looking at, that this winter is approaching. As of October 17th, which is just 3 days ago as I'm filming this video, the search camp had to be taken down because the campground was closing for the season and a storm was rolling through. With the looming thought of heavy snow about to cover the area and Austin still being missing, it's a scary and sad thought that, the snow is going to cover up wherever he is, and all of this has to be halted, and it's just getting prolonged until the spring, months and months and months now of just waiting. Brian would end up writing a very emotional post on Facebook just as all of this was happening, saying, quote, "As I sit here tonight as the snow covers the peaks of the mountain that might have taken Austin away from me and his family and friends, I try to come up with the words to describe what my future holds. The reality of having to head back to Minnesota without my boy is starting to unfold in front of me. My heart breaks more and more as every second ticks by with the memories of him, going through my thoughts of him smiling, laughing, and all the accomplishments he achieved as he grew up. Most of all, that I have to look into his sister and brother's eyes and see the despair as they try to accept the reality of me being back without their big brother, as I try to console them and tell them they will be okay, knowing their futures have all been changed drastically from before being told Austin was missing and he was possibly gone to heaven." End quote. This case is just such a scary and sad one. We speak here every single week about missing persons cases. And in each and every one, the family has to deal with not knowing what happened to their loved one. But to visually see the chances of finding your loved one just be stripped away from you right in front of you as snow begins to fall, that is just a visual I've never thought of before. And it's very scary and sad. And my heart completely goes out to Austin's family and friends. It's a lot that none of us will ever truly be able to understand, and I hope no one else ever has to go through that, because obviously having a missing loved one is nothing that anyone would ever put on someone. I think the biggest question here is what happened to Austin during those 3 days after he was supposed to arrive back to the boat. Between him getting to the peak, contacting his family and friends, and then not arriving to be taken out of there by the boat. And the question is, despite all of this searching, why hasn't anyone found one sign of him other than his campground that he most likely left and didn't return to? Considering the conditions that evening while he was up on that mountain, once he reached there, it was 7 p.m. when he made those phone calls, so it was getting dark if it was not dark already. And then the thought of him climbing down, I mean, there's the chances of him slipping, missing a step and falling, and he could have ended up, falling into an area that no one has found him yet. In his note, he wrote about having to free climb certain rocks and areas to get up to where he was. So that would mean to me that it was very steep in some areas. There could have been cliffs possibly that he could have fallen off. If the weather conditions had gotten so bad, I mean, could he have succumbed to elements as well? Could he have climbed into a cavern of some sort to get out of the elements and just passed away, or just no one's found him and he got lost from there? There's also the chances of an animal attacking him. Again, we talked about in the beginning of the video, there are tons of dangerous wild animals out there and he's alone out there. Is there a chance that a wild animal attacked him? Whenever I think about that theory, I always wonder why there would be no signs though, no blood, something. Or I guess we can always wonder if there could have been a human out there with bad intentions that Austin came upon. And I know with cases like this, everyone brings up missing 411 as well. However, considering the terrain, considering the elements, considering Austin himself was admitting that, this wasn't the greatest conditions that he was up there, I think it more so may sway towards, just a tragic accident, something happening, him falling off a ledge or something. And again, he's just somewhere that hasn't been found yet, which is extremely, extremely sad. And I would hope with everything in me that he's somehow alive and he somehow got out of there and he will somehow be found, because this is a young man that clearly had so many goals in his life ahead of him. He had so many accomplishments already under his belt and he had a bright future. And I know his family and his friends are out there hurting right now. His parents miss him, his siblings miss him, his friends miss him, and they want to bring him home. They need answers. So if you have any information as to where Austin may be, hey, you never know. Maybe he fell, hit his head, wandered into a nearby town somewhere and just hasn't been identified yet. Best case scenarios, Just take a look at this picture, keep an eye out, because you never know. Miracles do happen. As well as if you want to go support his family, there's a Facebook page. I'll have it linked below. There's also the GoFundMe, although efforts have seemed to have been scaled back due to the weather, so I don't know if they're searching anymore, it seems like. But if you want to go show love and support to the family on their Facebook, that is always there as well. Austin is a young man who just wanted adventure and to push himself and explore his early 20s. He should be coming home and living his life to the fullest. So if you have any information that could help this family out, please contact the authorities. I'll have the information down below. Let's take one more good look at Austin. Austin is described as 6 feet tall, weighing around 160 pounds, with brown hair, hazel eyes, and he wears glasses. He also has tattoos. He was last seen wearing a black sweatshirt and gray pants. The full body image with the missing persons poster shows what he was wearing when he was dropped off on September 14th by that boat. As I said, go show the family love and support. And as always, I hope you all stay safe out there, lock your windows and doors, and I will see you in the next video.